purpose, Christopher, is to not simply avoid the destruction of the home that I love, but to create a Romulus that exists, free of the Federation, and every planet around it. I've been waiting for this day my whole life. You will die. Your people will die. J.J. Abrams will die. You will all die. You see, only then will she be truly saved.
Star Trek has proven itself to be the franchise that will not die. First, it was canceled in 1969, only to be resurrected in animated form. Then the animated series was canceled, and Star Trek was dead for a while.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now?
But once Star Wars broke box office records, a Star Trek movie was ordered up.
Spock.
A few years later, a new television show.
Let's see what's out there. Engage.
Then several television shows, with the franchise booming in popularity in the early 90s. Then the franchise seemingly died again, with the underwhelming performance of the movie Star Trek Nemesis and the television series Enterprise in 2002 and 2005 respectively.
End program.
As early as 1968, Gene Roddenberry had wanted to do a prequel movie for Star Trek, showing Spock and Kirk at Starfleet Academy. Think when Kirk met Spock.
What are you saying, that they fake orgasm?
Of course, this movie never got off the ground during Roddenberry's lifetime. In 2005, after some corporate restructuring, Gail Berman, the president of Paramount, talked to Roberto Orci and Alex Kurtzman about possible ideas for a new Star Trek movie. Eventually, the idea got to J.J. Abrams.
When I was first asked to be involved in Star Trek, I said yes very quickly. I just felt that it was something that it just felt like the right thing.
He always wanted to do the Star Trek he knew. He always thought of Star Trek as being about Kirk and Spock. It was to the point where he completely skipped Star Trek Nemesis because he felt the franchise had become too far removed from what he knew it to be. Of course, skipping Nemesis is an activity 9 out of 10 Trekkers recommend for good health.
I had headaches for almost 6 years.
Abrams really wanted to dive into a Star Trek adventure, except without the budget restrictions that plagued the original series.
Craft appears to be built for speed rather than combat.
Something out there can't be seen. Explanation?
None. Completely elusive. In fact, it's invisible.
In 2007, Abrams made the jump from producer to director, and from there, we see Gene Roddenberry's original idea for a Kirk meeting Spock movie take shape, except surprisingly disconnected from Roddenberry's pitch. The production on this film was fairly solid, but with Orci and Kurtzman on the script, I'm sure there will be plenty to pick apart.
An alternate reality.
Precisely. Whatever our lives might have been if the time continuum was disrupted, our destinies have changed.
This reboot manages the task of resetting every previous Star Trek movie and series from continuity except one.
I tested it on Admiral Archer's prize Beagle.
Well, I know that dog. What happened to it?
I'll tell you when it reappears.
Enterprise, easily the worst of the Star Trek series. What, could Nero not make a quick stop to wipe that series out too? What a lazy bastard.
No, I'd have to turn the printer on again. I don't really want to.
And before you blame Scotty for the loss of Admiral Archer's prized Beagle, it's important to remember that Archer is the same man who beamed down to a planet on a diplomatic mission with his dog, where the dog caught a strange alien virus and almost died, and also managed to piss on one of the alien's sacred trees.
You shouldn't have brought your dog on a diplomatic mission, especially considering we had previously offended the Cretaceans.
Admiral Archer losing his dog is not because Scotty screwed up. It's because Admiral Archer is a terrible, terrible dog owner.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
This movie feels like it ran out of ideas for what should happen when Kirk lands on Hoth.
Acting Captain Spock has marooned me on Delta Vega.
Delta Vega. So they pretty much rip off the whole bigger fish thing in episode 1.
There's always a bigger fish.
And when we're borrowing from episode 1, you're in trouble. But it gets worse. I can't believe I'm really doing this, but the big fish scene, while being silly and redundant, has a purpose in episode 1 of setting up the idea that there is a bigger, badder guy behind the scenes. There is nothing like that happening in this movie. It's just doing this scene to give us a big monster that Kirk has to run from.
I know! You construct a weapon. Look around you. Can you form some sort of rudimentary lathe?
A what?
Prepare the red matter.
So a drop of red matter is enough to wipe out Vulcan?
Captain, gravitational sensors are off the scale. If my calculations are correct, they're creating a singularity that will consume the planet.
What the hell type of Armageddon level event was Spock going to do with that huge amount of red matter? Is it used in mixed drinks? And is he going to a huge kegger after this?
We're not hosting an intergalactic kegger down here.
Get him off this ship.
I get that Spock is emotionally compromised after losing his mom, but throwing a man off the ship and stranding him on some random planet seems extremely excessive. There is a reason for this given in a deleted scene, but I'll dive into that soon enough. So Spock just happens to fire Kirk from an escape pod to the planet that just happens to not only have Scotty, but Spock Prime on it as well. What are the odds of that happening? If this was the main timeline, you could just say this is how Kirk met Scotty. But the timeline's been changed, so that excuse doesn't work at all. They have a deleted scene that explains this meeting between them is the timeline trying to repair itself.
There's one line coming up in the Nimoy introduction scene that I desperately wish we'd kept in the movie because it's the thing we've been nailed on the most in all of the, which is, it was the line that kind of embraced the coincidences of.
I agree.
Which is actually an awesome idea, but since it's clear the new movies are just doing their own thing and are unlikely to connect to the old universe anytime soon, the timeline repairing itself idea doesn't really work. Of course, I've been wrong before.
Report? Still out of visual range. Give us 20 seconds. Alert Captain Rome out and start. Pete, could this be... Are you seeing this? If I do report... Sir, they're locked on our signal.
They're launching again.
Bravo 6 maneuver fire full. All decks, this is the captain speaking. Evacuate the ship immediately. Now. Get your designated shuttle.
In the shuttle, go!
This one's caught! I have medical shuttle 37 standing by. Get to it now. Can you do that? Exactly as I say.
My baby. It's coming now. Operation only.
Just keep breathing. You'll be fine. And the baby too.
I need you to go immediately. That's an order.
Please stop.
Sweetheart, we'll never make it if I don't fight them off.
You. Okay.
Boy?
Be here. Alert.
What are we gonna call it?
Name him after your father. Jim.
Sweetheart, can you hear me?
I can hear.
I love you.
I'm working on a shot and I think, oh, this would be really cool. There was a lens flare. But I know it's too much and I apologize.
And for 25 years, I planned my revenge against the Federation and forgot what it was like to live a normal life.
In an accident during the destruction of Romulus, Spock and Nero are sent back in time. Spock goes through the wormhole after Nero, which turns into a 25-year gap between Nero appearing in the past and Spock. So, with that time, what did Nero do? Did he go to Romulus and warn them of their impending doom, giving them over 100 years to prepare? Maybe give them the advanced technology that his ship possesses to help them not only survive their destruction, but also give them a better foothold on the galaxy?
It just raises too many questions.
The answer to these questions is no, he did none of that. All he did was sit around and wait for Spock Prime to pop up so he could destroy Vulcan in front of him. I understand being enraged and wanting revenge, but his hatred lasted for 25 years without any logical thoughts crossing his mind. The idea of saving his family, which he is now in the unique position to do, never occurred to him. Better to just sit around, I guess.
So just sign this, right here.
Oh, okay, give us a hand here.
All right, sir.
Work. Hello, boys. Have a good night's rest. I missed you.
In the deleted scenes, it's revealed that Nero and his crew were captured by Klingons and taken to Ruhrpenthe, where Nero escapes and gets his crew and his ship just in time to get to Spock Prime when he arrives in the past.
It's a piece of cake!
But this perhaps opens more problems than just having Nero sit around. Wouldn't the Klingons have advanced technology having Nero's ship for 20 plus years? If Nero and his crew could escape, why did they just sit around in prison? I guess Nero's crew is just really good at holding a grudge and really bad at any sort of rational thought.
You were not hired for your brains.
I'm a pretty big Trekker, but honestly this movie was a tough sell for me. I desperately wanted, and honestly still do want, a Deep Space Nine movie to continue the story there because that is the best Trek series in my opinion. So the idea of just dumping that continuity and recasting the original crew to do a prequel didn't appeal to me at all. Even though this was really a reboot, it was sold as a prequel movie showing the early days of Kirk and Spock. And it does do that, but with history modified.
Everything is different, but the same. Things are more moderner than before. Bigger, and yet smaller.
Even though I wasn't thrilled with the idea of this movie, I do have to admit I enjoyed it when I saw it in theaters, and my opinion of it has warmed over time. This isn't the Star Trek movie that fans deserved, but was the Star Trek movie we needed in order to ensure this franchise is revived. Essentially, this new Star Trek is dipped in a healthy dose of Star Wars. When I was younger, I always thought Star Trek was more character-driven, while Star Wars is more story-driven. This isn't to say Star Trek doesn't have great stories or that Star Wars doesn't have great characters, just Star Wars felt like characters being dropped into a story, and we see how the story develops around them.
I want to come with you to Alderaan. There's nothing for me here now. I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
Where in Star Trek, we see characters going into a story because they chose to, either because it's their job or it's something they think they need to do for the greater good.
We're going to attempt time travel. We are computing our trajectory at this time.
Of course, there are exceptions to this rule in both franchises, but this was just how I felt the franchises were different. These newer movies feel much more story-based, but that's not a bad thing at all. Both Star Trek and Star Wars have their high and low points.
There's nothing amazing about it. I know this ship like the back of my hand.
And in my opinion, they are both equally as good, just in different ways. There are far more accurate ways to separate them, the most obvious being the large amount of fantasy infused into Star Wars, while Star Trek lies exclusively in the sci-fi genre. The previous Star Trek canon involved 5 television series and 10 feature films, and that's not counting the animated series, which is sometimes counted and sometimes not. It's fairly imposing for new fans to dive into, even though every series and many of the movies stand just fine on their own. A reboot was needed for the franchise to appeal to a general audience. While the idea of this prequel never thrilled me or many of the fans, it was needed for the franchise to grow and continue. Also, the idea of bringing in new talent into Star Trek was desperately needed. As the series and movies went on, they started to get more stale. It was clear the idea well was running dry.
I'm going to have to remind myself every day
that we didn't come out here to play God.
Fresh minds need to take on the franchise with a fresh take. The bad news is those fresh minds were Alex Kurtzman and Roberto Orci, a pair of writers that seem less interested in having themes or ideas in their films and far more interested in having cool stuff happen. Their movies only seem to work if a good director is willing to put work into the movie to make their script work. The good news is J.J. Abrams is a director like that. He's not the best director ever, but he has yet to make a bad movie, which is rather amazing. As for the cast, everyone does a great job. I can spend all day complaining about this not being the Trek I wanted, but the odds are I would never get that Star Trek. If I did, I'd likely be disappointed with it. Instead, we got a movie that reinvigorated the franchise. If you look at it in a vacuum, it is really a very fun science fiction movie with some really strong action and great performances. I give this movie a 9 out of 10, and yes, that score surprises even me. Of the Star Trek movies I've reviewed so far, you know, both of them, this is the best one.
Oh, shit.
Hey, if you like this video, please make sure to hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. That helps me out a lot. And if you really love this video, consider visiting my Patreon page.